Welcome to I Hope This Helps podcast. My name is Eric Silva, and we have an exciting show today. We have Ryan Goldsmith from Paramount Residential Mortgage Group, our regional manager. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Tell
Eric.
us, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in the industry for 22, 23 years now. I came from Securities and Exchange, got bored with that, and in the early 2000s, people were really churning and burning in the mortgage industry. It got my attention from a family member that was in the industry who brought me in, showed me a little bit of what's going on. I kind of couldn't believe, the opportunities that presented themselves, and I'd spent about 6 or 7 years in the Securities and Exchange and had a bunch of licenses, 7, 9, 10, 4, like just stacked them all up because I thought that was my forever job. And it wasn't really, it wasn't all I'd hoped for. And so when I got introduced to the mortgage industry, I was just like, wow, this just seems like a great opportunity. And I just pulled the Band-Aid off, rolled my income back by, 60% and started all over again. And I don't regret any of it. It was great. It was a great choice for me. And can't imagine doing anything else at this point, honestly.
What's the most rewarding part of your job?
Honestly, just the freedom to do what I want, how I want. Of course, we all live within confines of rules and regulations and that type of thing. But in the mortgage industry, there's so many different ways to accomplish success that you kind of get to carve your own path. Like there's no one way. There's no one channel. There's no one way. There's just not one way of doing things. And I just love the freedom, not to get outside of the mortgage industry, but from where I came, everything was very defined, and there was the old establishment, there was a way, and you only, it was show up first thing in the morning, leave last at the end of the night, and you were judged if you didn't do those things. And the world is evolving, and that's not the only way to make money. And to have success and, to feel good about what you've accomplished. So it was, for me, the mortgage industry is the right place.
It's an awesome industry. We're an industry you go in there and no one can tell you as much as you can make or as little as you can make, and you don't need so much startup capital or anything like that. You just need to put in the time, and this is the definition of sweat equity, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you with the whole confinements of doing things. We already have our wives confining us to our things, right?
You said it, I didn't.
But you thought it, though.
You couldn't be. You nailed it right there with what another thing I love about the industry is just the opportunity to make what you want without any significant capital investment, right? Like think of so many other industries that exist out there. Where there's always an initial capital investment where you have to plunk down X number of dollars in order to just get started to find out if it's going to work. In the mortgage industry, that that couldn't be further from the way it has to happen. You can literally start with nothing except for, whatever the nominal expense is associated with getting your license. But once you get your license, you can, from that point forward, it's who are you and what's your work ethic. It really is.
We talk about, the freedom of everything, but, we tend to actually work more hours than most people anyway, right?
I guess it's funny you asked that because I guess I've not too long ago, I brought a friend into the industry who was outside of the industry, and he was looking for a career move. He wasn't sure the last 20 years of his life were in the right path. So I brought him over to the industry, and he saw everything that I was accomplishing, and he wanted to do the same. And he came over, and he fell in love with it quickly. But then he started to see the prickly side of things, which is how hard it is to make success happen. Right? Let's be honest. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, and I've been at it for 20 plus years, as you have, and maybe it looks a little easier the longer you've done it. So anyway, long story short, getting back to your point about, the freedom, but not so much. That is one thing that he identified after being in the industry for a while. He's like, man, like you can go anywhere and do anything but you're constantly attached to this phone. And he's like, it never stops. It never stops. Like, people have no boundaries anymore. You know, it's 10 o'clock at night. No one seems to have a problem emailing you or giving you a phone call to ask you a question. But my response to that always was, yeah, but you can be anywhere and do anything and do that. You know, the difference is you have to carry the tools in your head to be able to answer that phone call, give the service the client, whoever the client may be, give the service the client expects at the point of phone call, and then set a realistic expectation and then get back to it. Right.
Of course, and the one thing that, and it took me forever to learn this, is time management. That's number one. What are emails? That's everybody else's to-do list, right?
Yep.
And then we get so caught up, especially when you're first new in the business. I mean, granted, you got to do that. You got to answer every call, shoot every email. You got to be like 10 people and you're only one. But once you become accomplished and you're doing business with the same people, they know you'll get back to them. They know you're on top of it. They know you're working with it, right? And then I think this is where my career is involved, and I'm sure maybe yours as well, is I don't look at my emails right away, because once I do that, I go down a rabbit hole, and everything I needed to accomplish that day never did. Right? Because they're literally everybody else's to-do list. You know, Jenny, if you hear this, don't take this personally. But when a processor sends you an email, that's her to-do list to you, right? Once a client or sends you, let's say a realtor, sends you a list of things, that's their to-do list for you, right? So we need to concentrate on, our money-making moves, I would say, servicing our clients the best way that we know, and, also setting boundaries. And that's very important in this business. But, all right, so we've accomplished how this business is great in many ways. We've also established how it could, take over somebody's life, right? What are you excited about right now?
I mean, I'm excited every day at the mountain that's before me, because there's always a mountain to climb. It doesn't matter how much you funded last month or how big your team is. It can always be bigger, and you can always fund more. So, that's the primary goal in our industry, right? It's to fund loans. At every level within the organization, it's just everyone has their own level of funding goal, whether you're the CEO looking to do $1 billion a month, or you're a loan officer trying to do $1 million a month. And then there's every stack in between, whether you're a branch manager trying to build a team, or you're a regional manager trying to build a region. We all set out, wake up with the same, hopefully with a set of goals you're looking to accomplish. And that's the exciting part there. You never know what the unknown is. Every single phone call that you make, every outbound phone call that you make, or inbound phone call that comes your way, is an opportunity that's presenting yourself. And if you don't take that phone call, or you don't make that phone call, you're passing on opportunity. And that's the one thing that really, like you said, the work never ends. If you're truly driven, those things can drive you nuts, and you do have to watch yourself, because you can quickly spiral out of control with overworking and not putting enough time into your family, religion, whatever it is you have going on outside the workplace. But trying to strike that balance. I think my kids laugh a little bit, because we'll go skiing on the weekend, and I'm literally on the lift line. I'm looking at my phone, or I'm answering a phone call. But I think they also understand that's what it means to have a good work ethic. Like, you want to play hard, you better work hard.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And setting boundaries, that's something I've been working on, especially when I am around my kids, and because they grow up so fast, right? So we got to take in those moments. So I've been actually more conscious of putting my phone aside. But now I'm talking about on a Sunday or a Saturday. To me, it's like, all right, is it really nothing that can't wait until Monday? Like, if I have a free time, trust me, I'm answering that phone. But the minute I'm with my family, like, I need to put that aside.
100%.
So I know this is a podcast that we're doing for everyone else, but I'm going to take this for my selfish reasons too, because the best way to get better is by learning from others, right? And you've made President's Cabinet in our company pretty much every year that you've been here.
No, definitely not every year, Eric.
It seems every year that I've been here.
Okay,
and I've been here about 8 years now.
Yeah, that may be. No, it was a slow grind. I mean, when you make a move to a new company, which I did, obviously coming here this is my 12th year, so 11 years ago, I got out of the gate hard, and then, it's a grind. You have to establish yourself within a new organization. You have to get your customers to understand that this is, you didn't just make the move selfishly, that, the new home that you've chosen is one that's going to help them achieve their goals. And for me, the only way that happens is it takes time. And that's one thing that sometimes scares me about bringing on new people that make too many moves, right? Like one of my main objectives here at PRMG is recruiting and bringing on new team members. And I'll be honest with you, one of the things I look at when I'm looking at a recruit is I'm going to take a snapshot of their NMLS history. And if you move every 6 or 7 months, unless it's a really compelling story, I probably lost interest, because the last thing I want to do is pour my heart and soul in developing someone and integrating them into my company, my forever place, for them to just burn out the door in 6 months and, tell me it was my fault. Well, were you here long enough to figure that out? So, I understand people make moves, and sometimes you can see a hit, and there's an explanation for why you made those moves. And if there's a compelling reason behind it, like, let's talk and break it down. But if you're just moving constantly, you're probably never establishing your workplace and allowing your customers or your referral partners to know that you're serious about the place you're at now, which is probably why you're not achieving all that you wanted to achieve. And I was no different. If you back up the clock a little bit, I've been here for 12 years, so you can start to realize we're getting closer to that 2007, 2008 meltdown.
Oh,
Right?
that was fun.
Yeah. So if you back down the 12 years, I had a few moves between what I was hoping was going to be my forever home. That company unfortunately didn't make it in the collapse.
Not many did.
Yeah, so I made a few moves, and PRMG was willing to overlook that. I was only at a place a year and a half, but then that one went out of business, and so there was a story on why I made some quick moves. So again, there is an explanation for quick moves. It's just you got to watch that habitual behavior. But then getting here, it took me 3 years, I think, Eric, before. I can't remember for sure if it was my third or my second year. It may have been my third year. And honestly, my third year, I didn't even make president's cabinet. I was close, but I didn't make it. And the owners at PRMG have something they call, what is it? Captain's choice.
Captain's choice, yeah.
Captain's choice. And that's somebody that they identify as an up-and-comer, if you will, someone that they know has it in them to accomplish, and maybe they got close, or maybe they didn't even get close, but maybe a portion of the year they really knocked it out of the park, and for that reason, they say this person is somebody we want to kind of bring into the circle to, and let them know if you work really hard, this is what's ahead. And so they invited me, and I went that year. It was awesome. We had a great trip. I got to spend great quality time with the owners and other people within the organization that were doing great. And then the next year I didn't make it, Eric.
I didn't expect that.
Yeah, no, I didn't make it on goal. And I didn't go that year. And that hurt. Just, it didn't hurt my emotion, but it hurt, like, the side of me that's competitive. It was a little bit of an ego hit. I was close. I don't want to say how close I think it was, but if I remember correct, I was real close, like a few loans.
Like Paul and Robert did.
No, to be honest with you, that's a good question. I didn't make it, right? And there's a lot of other people that did, and like, how deep are their pockets, right? Like, how many people can you bring? So no, I didn't expect it, I didn't get it, and I didn't go. But then after that, I've made it every year. Although I'll tell you what, we got some great talent coming on and within the organization, and I hope I make it this year. There's some new teams out there that are putting up some big numbers. For the region, I was number 2 last year. But number 3 is right on my heels. So okay. I need to work extra hard this year.
All right. So let's back up a second, right?
Yep.
So what I got out of this so far is, and then you're going to answer some of my questions I really want to know. Like I said, I'm going
Yeah.
to take advantage of this, right?
Yep.
There's no such thing as the Amazon effect
Nope.
when in this business or in life, right? You got to look forward. You got to put in the grind. You got to look 5, 10 years,
Yep.
15, 20 down the road, right?
Yep.
Most millionaires, that become millionaires, it's like 30 years down the road, always, investing in their 401ks, IRAs, building equity in their properties, so on and so on. So business and industry, any business, unless, there's always someone that gets lucky. There's always an exception to a rule, but you got to put in the grind. You got to work, right? Got to answer all those calls in the beginning.
Yep.
So once you become established, you don't need to kill yourself working those 100-hour work weeks.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
you did. I know I did.
Yep.
So back in the day, 7 days a week, no breaks, no nothing.
Yep.
All right. So let's fast. Now you are a president cabinet member. You're always top in our company. You're putting in those numbers. So one of your jobs is recruiting.
Yep.
So I want to know how you go about recruiting. I want to know what you going about your day. And I also want to know about how do you foresee your numbers and how do you figure out how to get there and what's your daily grind like?
I mean, the recruiting to me is really nothing more than getting to know people, right? So I'm often asked, well, what is it you say to make the sale? Or, more pointed questions, like thinking there's just some magic, put together of words that equal successful sale and recruiting. And the truth is, it's nothing more than a grind. And by grind, I mean, you need to first identify targets meaning individuals that meet what you think would be a good fit to your organization, right? Every loan officer has a DNA of what their expectations are from the organization they work for. And, I'm without naming names of companies, there are companies that are in alignment with PRMG where we have a competitive advantage over them, but we fall into the same circle. So those are good fits to work for PRMG, and we can improve their lives. And there's other organizations out there that are not a good fit, and that's not to say there's not a loan officer within that organization or a branch manager within that organization that didn't maybe make a bad decision. They went down a path that they shouldn't have gone down, and now they need to come back to a PRMG type organization. But so identifying the targets is number one. Number two is you can't make one phone call and expect to make the sale when you're recruiting, because human nature says you need to get to know the person before there's trust factor. And, there's all kinds of studies, and I don't want to start quoting numbers that I don't really know off the top of my head, but I've heard them, so many times people they don't associate with you until the 7th or 8th phone call, right? It takes that many phone calls before they start to identify with you, and realize you're a person and are more inclined to listen to you and open up to you. So you have to make the phone calls, and that sometimes it can take a year, right? So if you're not building a pipeline or a bench, if you want to make an association of sports, there needs to be a bench of people that you constantly are talking to who may be really happy with the organization they work at today. But you don't know, this is an ever-evolving industry. And not every owner of every organization is in it for the long haul. And they may be either looking to get out, and so when they start to look to get out, they start changing the way they're investing into the company. So now, or maybe they're making a sale of the company and they're preparing it for that, and that usually means tightening the belt. When it's tightening the belt at the top, it usually means they're tightening the belt at the bottom too. And then people start getting uncomfortable with where they are, and then the conversations that you've been having for the last year, 2, 3, sometimes longer, can quickly develop into, oh man, I don't like the way things are going around here right now. I think I want to talk to Ryan a little more deeply about what PRMG has to offer and how I would fit into that organization. But if I never talked to them before, they're never going to think of me to have that conversation. So, and oftentimes it may seem cheesy to the people that I'm talking to, but I'll often introduce myself and use my tenure to my advantage, right? Because, hey, I've been here for 10 or 12 years, 12 years. I'm successful within the organization and I'm looking to bring new people on. I didn't just start last month and I need to get you on board tomorrow. Otherwise, my boss is going to think I'm good for nothing. And that guarantee I secured myself is going to be out the door, right? Like, selfishly, I'm telling people that. And I hope that loan originators, branch managers, when they're talking to the recruiter they're talking to, I hope they're asking those questions, because if they've only been there for a year, how much do they really know about the organization? Like, are they really rooted within the organization to know that it is a good place, or are they just trying to get them in the door? And they've made 6 moves in the last 6 years too, and you're going to follow this person to this new organization, and the next thing you know, they're gone, and you're stuck there, And if you're a branch manager and you have, your money tied up within an organization, it's not so easy to leave. It's not easy to leave at all, especially if you're a responsible branch manager who maintains a good P&L, and you want to make sure you're set up for the future. The last thing you do is just burn out the back door, and so, I use that to my advantage. You have to kind of identify what is it you have to offer the person you're talking to, but you need to know enough about them to identify that. And not to go on too long, but also asking questions of people. Like, you need to be a good, right? You need to be a good listener. To be a good recruiter, you need to be a good listener. Like, I often joke and say, it's like you're a therapist in some ways, right? Because the first thing I want to do is ask you, well, I'm not going to just tell you about PRMG and tell you a bunch of things you don't care about. Why don't you tell me what doesn't work within your organization? Like, you may love where you work. There's something that doesn't work. Why don't you tell me what doesn't work? And then I'll tell you if I have something to solve your problem. And if I don't, well, then everything you have, I have, and it's not a good fit. But we can still be friends. We can still compare notes, and no one knows what the future holds. And maybe that means I'm going to come work for you someday. I hope not. I hope PRMG is my forever home. 12 years, the owners are young. It's a privately held company. They do it because they want to, not because they have to. I mean, it's a good place to work. I'm real happy here.
No, so am I.
Good. Happy to hear that.
Happy to hear that. Right? All right. So the recruiting, like you said, it's very important.
Yep.
And it's also important for branch managers. It's also important for anyone that's trying to grow. Right.
Yeah.
Now, I understood everything about asking the right questions, listening,
Yep.
and using your time, your stuff. I also understood what you were also saying, try to target like-minded people, correct?
Yeah.
Now, for people out there, right, we're trying to educate people out there. Now, when you put this list together, I see you maybe grab 5 companies that you feel like we're better than, and
Yes.
we'd be a better fit, and we
Yep.
can help them grow and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
You also look to make sure they don't switch around all the time, and they put all that work in, right? But okay, warm leads are great, right? When someone like me is like, hey, listen, go call Joe Smith down the street. He's not happy.
Yeah.
Very good friend of mine, and all that. So those are easy. Now, when you go target somebody that you don't know, just like a LO has to target a realtor, right? They don't know, and they got to establish that relationship. How do you go about doing that for first phone call or introduction or anything like that?
I mean, a lot of what I do is just that, right? Like, I wish I had a steady lead flow, if you will, of people who are thinking of me. Oftentimes we tell people, ask your realtors, because they deal with loan officers. Ask them who's not happy, right? Because that's your first indication to go make a phone call. Or ask a realtor, like, you have a loan go bad lately with a loan officer that seems like a good loan officer, but maybe the organization failed them, and you want to call that person. Like, I try to use those avenues first, but there's not enough of that to keep you busy all day. And so you do go to the quote unquote cold call. But that's where, being in the industry for as long as I have, every person I call, I study them before I call them. Like, some people may say, well, just give me a phone number, I'll call them and I'll figure it out. Well, I don't go, and I'm not saying that's wrong. Maybe that works for some people. That doesn't work for me. And that's why sometimes recruiting can become a little time consuming, because the way I go about it is, we have a lot of tools at PRMG, as you well know, to kind of fish around and figure out what kind of loans they do, where do they, what's their average loan amount, where do they fund their loans, who are their realtors, who are their title companies. Like, we can see all that information. Where have they worked? NMLS consumer data tells you what their history is. I'm going to look at all that information before I make the first phone call, because being in the industry for 20 years and the capacities that I've worked over my 2 decades, I probably have something in common with them. There's a degree of separation with just about everybody I've ever talked to. I knew somebody they worked for. I knew somebody they worked with. I knew a rough time that they had at an organization, and I laugh about it. I find something about that candidate that when I make the phone call, I have a connection point that I can reference to warm them up, to have a laugh, to something, I don't just pick up the phone call and say, "Hey, Eric, I don't know anything about you, and you want to come work for PRMG?"
So you don't do those generic texts like, from 30 different recruiters. "Oh, your volume looks great. You look like a great fit. You want this?"
No.
So you actually do the homework.
Yeah.
You figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so you're not BSing them, because I love when they catch me on the phone. I'm like, "Oh, yeah? How much did I close last month?
Yeah.
Or what did I close last year?"
Yeah.
And they have no clue.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that approach. The other approach that I get a lot when I get phone calls is, you get the phone call, they don't even tell you where they're calling from or what they're calling about. Like, you're literally not getting a phone call back now, because you didn't tell me where you work. You didn't tell me what you're. Hey, Eric, it's Ryan. Hey, can you give me a call back? No, because anytime somebody calls me with purposeful intent, there's information that's left behind that makes me know I want to call them back. And so I avoid those things. I'm not much for voicemail either, because most people aren't going to return your phone call. I try to get them on the phone. If you're calling somebody that's been referred to you, sure, you can leave them a voicemail, but chances are they're not going to call you back.
All right. So chances are most people nowadays don't answer their phone.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Yep.
So you leave them a voicemail. Is there a routine you go through? Is it voicemail, then text message, then email? Do you DM them on social media? Chances are it'll probably take you 7 different avenues of trying to reach them before you even speak to them the first time, correct?
Yeah, I'm not much of a voicemail listener. I feel like in today's day and age, most people are annoyed when you leave them a voicemail. They're like, "Bro, why didn't you text me?" Right? So if it goes to voicemail, I won't almost never leave a voicemail. If there's been a point, I want my first point of contact to be to at least introduce myself. Sure, if I call them 3 times and they never pick me up, I may have to resort to a text, but it will be a text. It won't be a voicemail.
Do you use social media to your benefit at all, or?
No, I don't. I don't know why I don't, but I don't. LinkedIn has been so overused. People,
I hate logging in.
Yeah. Like me too, right? Like, so I just when I do things, I look at it because I'm recruited all the time too. So I identify what I don't like, and so I kind of stay away from those things. And the LinkedIn inbox messages, like, yeah.
What about through Facebook or Instagram and anything like that?
Nope.
No? Okay.
I'm all phone call.
Listen, I'm only asking. There's no wrong way.
No,
Obviously, you're successful, man. You do what you got to do.
No,
I'm trying to learn here.
Yeah, no, I don't. And that's not. It's probably not right. There's probably a lot more. There's probably more strategic ways I could go about things, but I've still kept it old school with good old phone calls and conversations. I know a lot of other people attack it through social, and sending messages that way, or some people go as far as to search them down on Facebook, see where their family members are, and like, I don't go quite that far. I keep it pretty business, and just stick with, again, the NMLS and trying to find commonality that way.
No, absolutely. And like you said, there's no wrong or right way.
Yeah,
so
there's so many ways,
There's
right?
so many ways, right?
That's right. You can drown in ways to do things in the mortgage industry.
It's as long as you find success in it, and obviously you have,
Yeah.
right? one more question in regards to this, because now when you put your list together,
Yeah.
right? Do you do, since you're just looking at numbers, do you do a list of 20? Do you do a list of 100? Do you do a list of 1,000? Do you start with a group and then take them off and then add someone new as either
It's
they come
constantly,
on
yeah,
or?
it's constantly evolving based on market conditions, honestly, right? That's another great thing about our industry. There is no lack of opportunity, whether it's companies, loan officers, branch managers. There's just more than I can reach in a single day, a single month, a single year, right? Because I'm not just a recruiter. That is like,
Of course not. I know
yeah,
that.
yeah. Right. But I probably don't spend enough time recruiting. Like if I'm looking back at my day, somehow I drown in, like you said, I drown in the emails. I drown in the text messages. I don't necessarily look at it as time not well spent, because there's another aspect to recruiting that I think oftentimes goes undiscussed, which is recruiting internally. And by that, I mean retention, right? Like me answering my branch manager's questions as quickly as possible, or giving them the support they need so that their day is successful, hopefully gives them reason to continue to work here. And I can tell you this, it's a whole lot easier to retain your talent than it is to go find new talent. So, if I spend a good portion of my day just making sure the people that are on my team are happy, that is my first goal. That's the first goal I set for myself every day, is making sure the people I already have working for me are content, happy.
And I gotta admit, you do a really good job with that. And PRMG itself does a great job with that, because there's so many tools out there that we have access to. Our guidelines, our oh my God,
All the
all our
marketing
tools,
content,
the marketing,
yeah,
everything like that. So, to me, if you barely hear from me, right? We usually talk and just say something. So when I do reach out to you, wait, this is serious.
Yeah.
Like Eric has an issue.
Yep.
You usually tend to me right away.
Yeah.
But then there's other people that don't take advantage of our tools and probably do waste your time trying to, hey, Ryan is Chat GPT, just ask him.
I try to drive as many people as I can, if they'll take it, to we have that AI, the bot, we call it Moby. The more people that use it, the better it gets. So I try to drive people to AI, and I try to use it myself just so that I'm familiar with like what the key search words are, so that they'll find what they're looking for. But sometimes, when a branch manager is calling you, it usually means they've exhausted the tools that they know how to use, and they're looking for a lifeline. And so I do my best. If I'm sitting here, doing this, it's hard to answer. I forgot to shut my phone off. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
But if they're calling, it's usually for good reason, and I call them back, right? And so that's my internal recruiting, is making sure that the people that are already on the team are happy with being on the team, and then you're going to the external side, which honestly I probably don't tell the owners. I probably spend less than 10% of my day on recruiting, which is so wrong, right? Because recruiting that's your lifeline to building additional wealth. And so if you want to continue to grow, you have to do more and more. And so I do have some future plans for this year. For the first time, I'm going to get somebody to help me make some of those first outbound phone calls. I know it's always important when you make a first outbound phone call to be the guy or the girl, who's the decision maker. But when you, like, as you pointed out, you identify these targets, like there's thousands of them. There's literally thousands of people that I can make outbound phone calls, and I can't get to all those people, because if you make that many phone calls, right, it's just a numbers game. Like the more outbound phone, everybody knows this about sales. The more outbound sales calls you make, you are just bound to find more opportunity. And so when I spend as little time as I do, sure, the amount of time I spend may be more strategic, and maybe my success ratio is a little bit higher. But as the numbers play out, if you have more people making phone calls to the pointed people just to say, hey, are you interested in a phone call? Then at least that first round of, yeah, I'm interested. Then I know when I'm getting on the phone with that person, that's someone that really wants to hear what I have to say. So I'm going to try to implement that this year, get somebody to make some, strategic outbound phone calls based on criteria that I set, so that I can be more strategic with my time and only talk to people that want to have a conversation.
That's smart. I mean, as we get in this business, we have to evolve, right? Especially with technology going the way it is and everything like that.
Absolutely.
And some people appreciate that.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, to look at you like, oh, this guy's serious. He has an assistant reaching out to you saying, hey, Mr. Goldsmith over here.
Yep.
He really thinks you're great. He would love to set up a phone call. Are you available any of these days? And then all you do every day is just get on those phone calls, set a time.
Exactly.
And you can give them all your attention.
100%.
The other thing is what we don't speak about a lot is making some of these phone calls, you get drained.
Yeah.
And then you also you become monotone.
Yeah.
And when you speak to someone, you're not giving them their full attention. And then you're just like, what do that person has no interest. Like, wait, I was excited. Not anymore.
I know. And that's why when you're going to recruit, so it's often thought you need to time block, and so I'm so anti this time blocking thing, and I'm probably get chastised by a number of people. That
I hope Paul watches this. By the way.
I know. Time blocking, like you need to set aside this hour every due to recruiting, and you know what my answer to that is? I am not in the mindset to have that positive behavior that you just mentioned at the same hour of every single day. And so what I do is when I'm elevated, like maybe I just talked to Eric and he just gave me this, he just told me about this great builder relationship that he built, and he's, sky's the limit on this opportunity. Well, he just passed off a little bit of a high from him to me, and now I'm on cloud 9 because he's doing good. And now I'm in a mindset to make an outbound phone call, because now when I make that outbound phone call, I'm going to share some of that excitement and energy with the person I'm talking to. At 9:30 every morning, I'm not in the mood to have time blocked to make recruiting calls, because that's the time you make phone calls. That's not for me. And not to mention, some days you wake up and the sky is falling on a bunch of, on a loan, and I need to put my efforts towards making sure that client gets to the closing table and they have a house to live in that night. And that needs to happen before I make the outbound phone call. And then maybe when I'm done with that, I'm so pissed off that I don't want to make outbound phone calls because I'm grouchy about how the whole situation, and maybe I don't even make an outbound phone call because it's not a good day for me. But what you need to remember though, Eric, is when you're not having a good day, the person you call may not have a good day either. And which is why I do think leveraging an assistant to make those outbound phone calls, to ask those, like, you can't just make an outbound phone call to a recruit and say, oh, well, I made the outbound call because now's a good time for me. But how do you know it's a good time for them? Which is why if we can at least come up with something to say that gets their attention, to say, do you want to have a conversation? Then set the time that works for them. Then that's why I don't feel like so much time will be wasted. In that you make the outbound phone call, you make the connection. They're like, yeah, I'd love to talk to you, but I can't talk right now. I'm in the middle of a closing. Oh, well, of course. And as a recruiter, when you're wearing that hat, you should ask that question. Don't just start running your mouth and expect that because they answer the phone that they have 20 minutes to hear you jibber jabber in their ear, right?
I agree.
Be respectful of their time, especially if you're calling somebody that you've identified as top talent. They're top talent because they're busy, and you need to respect their time. And after you catch their attention, ask them if now's a good time. And if it's not a good time, when is a good time?
I'm with you 100%. I hope my wife actually listens to this, because she's like, did you make that phone call? I'm like, listen, I'm in a bad mood right now.
100%.
I don't want to make that phone call.
Now
is not the time.
Yeah.
And, she's like, and I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah.
If even with text messages or an email, I sit back, and this is actually growth on my part, because I used to be off the handle a couple times.
That's because you're a little older now. We all aged.
A little bit older, but
with age comes maturity. With maturity comes a little more filter.
A little bit.
And then you go the other way. When you get even older, filter totally
goes out, right? Whatever comes to mind, you just say, right?
Exactly.
No, I think it's also like you mentioned, the people that keep going everywhere, jump in conversations all the time, right?
Yep.
Because they never take a look inside. It's never their fault. It's always the
No,
next guy. It's always
never.
somebody else's. It's underwriting. It's
Yes.
process. We don't
Yes.
have the right programs. Oh, that guy has a program that is just. I could do 90 LTV and he could do 89.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
vice versa. I could
Yeah,
do
no.
89, he could do
Right.
90.
Yeah.
Right. And they just never take, accountability. That's something I've been trying to do better myself is take accountability, right?
Yeah.
Look inwards before I go outwards.
Yep.
Don't major in minor things.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, why blow up?
Yep.
Maybe that person's having a bad day.
Yeah.
Like they're human. They make mistakes.
Yep.
The one thing I love about PRMG is everybody works with each other, right? Everybody wants to get to closing.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you have that attitude, they'll help you get there,
Yep.
right? And when you don't, I've also seen the opposite.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, why should I help you
Yeah.
right now? But
Yeah.
that's just
Human nature.
human
Yeah.
nature in anywhere possible. And
Of
I wasn't
course.
talking about PRMG.
Yeah.
itself.
No, that's just human nature.
All right, so we've gotten through a lot of stuff that I'm taking all in. Now, let's go here. You, like you said, been in the business for a long time. And what advice would you have for a new person, a loan officer, getting into this business?
I mean, there's so many ways to attack this. Like, what is your decision to come to the industry? What compels you to want to be here? Like, if you've gotten past all of those mental hurdles, the next question is, are you willing to put in the time and effort it's going to take, right? There's, as we talked about many times now, there's so many ways to do things. And so I don't know that there's any one answer to your question, other than to say, you got to be ready to grind. You need to find a mentor, right? Like I do think that's key, finding a mentor that is in alignment with what you think you want to accomplish, right? Because if you're like, you find a mentor that's 100% social and you're like, I got a face for radio, then maybe this social mentor is not for you unless you're just looking to make a complete change. You want to rip the Band-Aid off and go that way. But the point is you've thought that through and you've made a decision. So to answer your question is, find a mentor that is in alignment with how you think you want to accomplish your business, and then just get under their wing and follow them, and do as they say, and you will find success if you put in the time and the effort. Can you come into the business and make it up? I mean, sure, there's people, inventing new ways of doing things every day, and maybe you're going to think of something no one else did, but you're still going to need a mentor to some degree, right? There's still things about this industry that I don't say they'll never change, but they haven't in the 20 years I've been here. And that's another thing. Looking forward, you constantly have to be evolving, but they're small evolutions. We haven't had anything earth shattering, where it's like, can't teach the old dog a new trick. We've all managed to survive. Of course, that's another part of the success is there's so many people dropping out of the industry because it's getting harder and harder, and it is evolving, and they're just not willing to evolve. So as long as you're willing to evolve, go with the flow and put in the work. But it does seem to me that a lot of people are going the social route is like really seems to be important. Having some sort of social presence is just so important. But when I came up in the industry, social presence meant never being home and going to parties all the time. And I don't mean like ragers. I just mean like stopping by cocktail hours, every evening. Realtors are getting together here, or brokers are getting together here. Like you're just constantly trying to attend things. That was what it meant to have social, presence. Now it's totally changed. It's like you don't even necessarily need to go to all these things as long as you're getting your content out there. Although I still feel like there's no replacement for a little hand-to-hand combat,
Of course, breaking bread and everything like that.
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that
Pressing
stuff.
the flesh, man. You got to shake that hand because there's just no replacement for that, in my opinion. But some would argue and say you could never meet someone, they feel like, and I know this to be true, right? Like I fall victim to watching, some programs that you feel like you've watched them evolve online so long that you feel like you know them. You don't know them, but you feel like you did because you watch their nonsense that they do on TV every week. And so I get it. I guess if you really put out that much content, people can really associate with you. But the point is, back to your question, not to get too far down a rabbit hole here, but back to your question is, you need to put the effort in to make that so.
Okay. I would actually add something as well. Like, I would think somebody needs to build the foundation.
Yeah.
Because if you're coming new to this business, you don't know what a DTI is. You don't know what
Yeah,
an
yeah.
LTV is.
Yeah, that's your
You don't
mentor.
know what,
Yeah, that's your mentor.
Like, so
Yeah.
first and foremost, you need to learn, what you're selling.
Yep.
Once you have that down, then you got to be able to do everything else you said. And mentorship is big,
Yep.
right? There's some people that come into the business and they're like, just go sell and we'll take care of everything
Yeah.
else. I don't know how that works, because my advice to anyone in this business, you're only as good as your last deal.
Yeah, you are.
Especially when you're doing real estate business. And why do you think it's so hard to get their business in the first place? Because
Yeah.
they're trusting you
With their paycheck.
with their livelihood.
Yeah, yeah.
How they feed their families and everything like that. So that's
Yep.
how I would add to that. But thank you for that. So
What else you got for me?
I got a lot. I got a lot, bud. I got a
Oh
lot.
boy.
Oh man.
Save stuff for future episodes.
All right.
What else you
So,
got?
Paramount Residential Mortgage Group.
Mhm.
If you had to sell our audience on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
For yourself, for myself, for anybody in the company,
Yep.
what's so great about it?
I mean, what do I love about it? I can't say what's so great about it. What do I love about it? Is just, well, first of all, starting from the top down, right? Like, the slogan is built by originators for originators. And like, if you break that down, there's really not much more to say. Built by originators for originators. They were originators. They, Paul, Robert, Gary, and Kevin. They were writing loans. Paul and Robert were the founders. They ran the organization for 10 years themselves, and then they added on Kevin, and then Gary was the final chapter.
17 and 18, I believe, right?
Yeah, somewhere around
17 when
there.
I came in
Yep.
was Kevin, and 18 was Gary shortly
Yeah.
after.
Gary was working with the organization in
With the capital markets.
yeah, capital markets. Yep, as a contractor, and Paul saw the talent, knew the talent, and wanted him on board. And Gary was, he was doing his own thing. He had a rough go with the collapse in 2007, and wasn't sure he ever wanted to do that again. But ultimately decided PRMG was a good fit for him, and he came on board. But anyway, these gentlemen they're salt of the earth. Every one of them, not just sometimes you have a leader. A C-suite where there's one great and there's a couple people you're like, these guys are great across the board. They only started PRMG because they were writing loans themselves and they thought they could do it better. And so they just, one day decided, let's go try to do this ourselves in 2001, and opened up PRMG, and then just building blocks grew from there. And to this day, 24 years later, actually this year in September, to this day, they show up to work every day and they put in the hours like you and I do, not because they have to, because they want to, because they enjoy the industry, because they still wake up every morning wanting to accomplish just like you and I do. This isn't like a little pet project to them where, they're off on their vacations and there's hired help running the organization, and grinding out every penny they can. They're on the phone, talking to branch managers, talking to regional managers, recruiting themselves. That's the Paul. You got Robert, who's out there looking at loans every day, like, not making loan decisions as an underwriter, but looking at loans and risk on certain loans that get elevated to him, or working on post-closing problems, or deciding credit risk. And so, but in loans, loan level stuff every day. And you got Kevin, who's on, Wheels Up Kevin. That's his nickname. He's always on the road. He's the face of PRMG, out there, attending everything that he can to make sure that he's ahead of the curve. on what's happening in the industry, B, getting out the good word about who PRMG is, and then you got Gary running capital markets. So there's just there's not a sharper mind that I can think of who can run capital markets, who works with Compass Analytics and has developed his own strategy and has been shared across the industry on how to sell loans. Like, who can say they have a cap markets person who does that? All that rolled up into a private organization who is really transparent about what they're doing, which is wonderful because transparency means everything. I mean, I just have the sense from the top down that you being here is, they don't look at you as an employee. They look at you as a contributing part to the organization, and they're here to serve you. I don't know if that's silly, but I don't feel like I'm here to serve them. They're here to serve me. Like, they're constantly asking, what can we do to make it better? Right? Like, there's a limit to everything. You can't just come in and say, I want, something ridiculous, but there's a limit to everything. But they're constantly just trying to meet the demand built by originator forwarders so that,
That they
the
do.
success. Yeah.
And the wonderful, well, you just described them perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
They're four total opposite
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And how they mesh is like the perfect machine.
Yeah.
And it's incredible, like whoever foreseen it or how they all got together, but
Yeah.
seemed like faith.
Yeah.
And that is definitely awesome.
Yeah.
And everything you said is 100% true. Now, let's go here.
Mm-hmm.
You are more in line talking to us every day, the
Mm-hmm.
branch managers.
Mm-hmm.
I know you even get, talk to certain LOs that,
Sure.
in your region, and you're there to help everyone. You know our insider underwriting or closers, you help everyone.
Yep.
Because I'll give an example. When you speak to me, you're defending like the inside,
Mm-hmm.
and when you speak to them, you're defending me,
Yep,
and you
exactly.
play that like
Yeah, yeah,
that good cop, bad cop all around,
Of
and you
course.
do a great job. All right, so if you are selling it to a consumer, first time home buyer, why use PRMG?
First time home buyer. Well, that's where you're selling yourself at that point, right? You're selling your wares. You're making sure that the consumer, make sure the consumer knows that you are connected and dialed in. I mean, I feel like this goes right back to that whole job hopping thing. Like, how are you convincing a seller that you're going to take command of their loan and you're going to guarantee delivery if you haven't been with the organization long enough to really promise that? Like, so, but having command of the technology within the organization, having command of your guidelines and knowing what you can or can't accomplish, knowing when to say yes, knowing when to say no, like how you communicate with the customer and what kind of confidence you exude to the customer is everything. Like, beyond that, there really isn't much more to the consumer. They don't care that you've known the credit manager for 20 years. All they just want to know that you're going to close their loan. And so I feel like that just comes through the confidence that you have when you talk to your customer.
Oh, I understand that. That's
Yeah.
definitely on me. But the question is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm Eric Silva,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm getting a loan,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm either a first time home buyer or an investor. Never heard of PRMG.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you? What would you say?
I don't know that PRMG matters so much, does it? Do you think PRMG matters? Do you think
Once they start, they ask that question all the time because I speak to the consumer level all the time,
Okay.
right? And they ask, but once they start speaking with you, it's all about the relationship there. But like,
Yeah.
they look up questions, and first question they always ask,
Yeah.
"What's today's rate?" And what I say is, "Where's your credit?
Yeah.
How much down payment?
Yeah.
Would you go down the
100%.
box?"
Yeah.
There's no simple answer to that question.
I mean,
right?
if they're asking who PRMG is, that's where you're just going straight. If the question is really PRMG and not you, that's where you're going. Well, PRMG is a top 10, a top 20 privately held mortgage industry, top 20 privately held mortgage company, not mortgage industry. And we've been in business for 23 years. I've been with the organization for 12 of those 23 years. I have a great relationship with everybody from the CEO down to your closer. So, those are the kind of things that I'm going to talk to if I'm talking to a consumer, letting them know the longevity of the company. And like, oh, well, how about, I don't want to drop names, but, oh, how about this company? Yeah, they've been in business 3 years. you can try them out. Yeah. Oh, they got a great rate. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a good tech company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got some things going on in your life that need dissecting in order to qualify for your loan. Well, good luck.
Well,
You know.
of course. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, you like talking to a teller about mortgages?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, how many mortgages have they closed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, none.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, or sometimes if they're talking to the phone jockey who closed, like, oh no, but Eric, this person, I have data that says they closed 50 loans last month. Oh, they closed 50 loans last month. How much time do you think they have to give you if they closed 50 loans last month? Like, are they going to be able to put the time in you expect? Like, the question is, Nordstrom's or TJ Maxx? Like, I'm a Nordstrom's guy. Do I know that the shoes cost a little more? Yeah, I know they cost a little more, but I sure like the service when I go in there. And so, that's what you're kind of choosing between. Do you just want to press a button and hope it goes well? I mean, it's the largest purchase of your life.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, biggest investment in your life. Are you looking for someone who's gonna leave you high and dry the day of closing and your deposit's on the line and you're not getting that back? Like, I don't want to use scare tactics, but it's true.
I know it's a fact. How many
It's
times we got to
definitely a
save
fact.
another loan and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I would even argue that I know those shoes cost a little bit more. Analogy that you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're not going to mention names, but that big technology company that basically has all the commercials out
Yeah.
there. Go on their website. Go look at those rates.
I know.
That
100%.
is silly.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just. I keep calling them a marketing company because they know how to
Yeah.
market. And man, people think, oh, I went over there.
Right.
Yeah, you went right to the moon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck to you.
100%. To me, there has to be a balance between the technology and the Nordstrom service, and if you can price yourself right in the mix, then you should be good. And it's a joke anyway. Who's got the best price on what day?
No.
I mean, on what hour? No. Because it's a securities market. It's constantly trading. So sure, our rates may not change one day, but then the next day they could change 3 days, and and you're up and you're down, and this person's great one day, and then the next, so you kind of have to just choose someone you trust, someone that you have word of mouth from referral partners and are saying, this Eric gets loans closed. Like, you want to get this house? You've been looking for a house for 2 years. You finally scored a contract, and now you're going to trust your mortgage process to someone that you don't have a referral from, or when you spoke to them, you didn't get the warm and fuzzies, but their supposed rate was a little bit better, because, by the way, it wasn't locked. It was just a little loan estimate that wasn't exactly filled out completely correctly, based on what was available that day. But we sent it out looking good.
It looks great. Looks great, and also, we've been in this business for a long time, right? And especially on the wholesale end and everything like that.
Yep.
If a company is hurting for business and they need business, are they not going to go show you this really discounted rate to get the business in, and then all of a sudden just jack it back up once they get it all in?
Yeah.
Like,
it's a trust factor. It's totally
really
a trust factor.
Of course.
And people think, oh, well, I have the loan estimate. It's a lock. Nothing's a lock until you're closed.
Of course.
So.
Of course. We've gone through a lot of things. Is there anything exciting that down the pipe, from coming down PRMG's way?
No, I mean, when you talk about exciting things to come, this isn't brand new, as you know, and it's almost like it's reinvented old with a new spin. Is non-QM is a new product line, a newer product line to the industry that is just growing in leaps and bounds, because there's so much opportunity for people out there, the self-employed borrowers, who are looking for a loan, but because of the way they file their taxes, they oftentimes don't qualify, and they don't realize that there's lending options for them. And there's so many of, a lot of us that were in the industry for 20 years, we know our way around alternative lending options outside of GSE lending. But some of the newer folks that never experienced, they got in the business 2009, in that range after the collapse, they're not familiar with these products, and they've been doing GSE loans so long now that they don't really familiarize themselves. They're like, that's not for me. That's not for me. Well, you know that those are the things that is most exciting right now, because Fannie and Freddie, they were bailed out during the collapse. There's still government money there, you know, and their intention all along was really never to facilitate all of housing in the entire country. Like, that wasn't the goal of Fannie and Freddie originally, or HUD. But that's what it's been for a long time. And like, that was, you know, of course there's an exception to what I'm saying. There was always little niche options here and there, but the non-QM space, what we deem non-QM, is growing in leaps and bounds every month. You know, month over month, year over year now. It's been hot for at least a year, you know, 2 years now, but growing exponentially. And sales outlets on back end, you know, trading is becoming a little more fluid, which once the trading becomes more fluid, then the guidelines become a little more homogenized, which means you're not so specific on one target on a loan sale, which means you have better opportunity to get borrowers closed and sold. So I guess what I would tell people is, if you're looking for a way to expand your business, you need to expand your horizon on products, and studying the non-QM space and understanding where it fits into your business is just so important, because the average loan amount in the non-QM space is almost double the GSE loan, right? Because self-employed borrowers make a lot of money, they have a lot of cash flow, and they can afford a lot of house, just not necessarily on the IRS tax return, again, because of how they file their taxes. So I would just suggest people start expanding their horizon on the products they're looking at, and not just stay Fannie, Freddie, FHA, and just see what else is out there. I mean, you know, the other thing that people are always looking for is the equity lines, and PRMG is expanding out more into the equity line space for people who want to, you know, they don't want to touch that interest rate on that first loan. It's like they got that 2 handle,
Yeah,
the 3 handle, and they're like, you know, they need to do a cash out because they got that 25% credit card interest. And,
yeah.
you know, depending on how big that grows, even getting out of that 3% could help, especially since it's tax deductible interest. But, but HELOCs are definitely growing in popularity. So that's, you know, that's something that we do to provide a service to the client. That's not that's not a money making opportunity for us. That's something we do to keep our current client base happy and with us, so that they don't, you know, maybe seek a bank as an alternative, because we don't want to lose our customers to the banks. You know, you know, we're better than the banks. You know, we have more to offer than the banks, but, you know, sometimes the banks can beat us on products like that. So PRMG is expanding out its lineup to get, you know, more in the mix with that as we speak. You know, it hasn't rolled yet, but it's coming soon.
All right, awesome. Looking forward to it. Good. Now, we've talked about so much.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything that
Did
you
we?
want to mention?
Did we?
I think we have. Is there anything that you want to?
No,
anything that I missed?
No, man. I have no plugs, and I don't want to give it all away on my first date here.
You
I gotta get invited back. As you can see, I don't shut up. I got a lot. I got a lot to say.
Maybe I'm a good listener.
I've
been doing this for a while too.
I'm gonna have to talk to Jennifer about that and find out if you're a good listener.
Hey, easy, buddy, easy.
Something tells me I might get a different story.
Well,
Exactly.
I'm not going to put my foot in my mouth.
Okay, good. Oh, that'll be a first. Hey,
I've grown.
See, I told you the maturity thing, the age.
Definitely. All right, Ryan, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for joining me today. All right.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you having me out. You called me. You asked me if I would come. I was apprehensive, but I promised you I would, and here I am.
Oh, and I held you to it.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
And thank you very much, and I hope this helps.